Thank you. Well, the top Republican leader, Congressman John Boehner, very much in the spotlight these days. He blasted President Obama during an election event rally last night. Take a look.
I have a word to describe those people who have the audacity to speak up against the big government, the people who have the audacity to go out and support our Constitution, the people who are out there every day fighting for a limited government that has served our country so well for 200 years. And, Mr. President, that word isn't enemies. They're patriots.
All right, well, that was last night. That's the House Minority Leader. He wants to be the Majority Leader after tonight. We'll see what happens. He was going after the President over some comments that the President made last week, which you've probably heard, but we're going to play them for you again. They were on Latin radio, on a Latin radio show, and they were about immigration, a central issue to a lot of this. Here's the original comment from President Obama.
And if Latinos sit out the election, instead of saying we're going to punish our enemies and we're going to reward our friends who stand with us on issues that are important to us, if they don't see that kind of upsurge in voting in this election, then I think it's going to be harder.
All right, so that's the background here. Stephen Hayes is with us. He's a senior writer, of course, at the Weekly Standard and a Fox News contributor. Doug Schoen is a former pollster to Bill Clinton, as well as a Fox News contributor, and very much in the mix looking at all the numbers for today. You know what interests me, Doug, is that this back and forth is very central in a way to the issues that are out there right now. When you look at the Tea Party candidates and all of that, and actually let's play, because the President kind of walked back that enemies comment. Let's play that, and then we'll get their reaction.
I said, well, you can't punish your friends.
Right, that's right.
The folks who've been supporting it. Now, I did also say, you know, if you're going to punish somebody, punish your enemies. And I probably should have used the word opponent instead of enemies. Now the Republicans are saying that I'm calling them enemies. What I'm saying is you're an opponent of this particular provision, comprehensive immigration reform, which is something very different.
Doug?
Well, the President is in a real pickle here, Martha. On one hand, he knows that voters are angry. On the other hand, he's got to motivate his base. And the third point is he's got to govern with the Republicans after the repudiation he's likely to suffer at the polls later today.
You nailed it, because we just saw all three of those elements in this back and forth, didn't we?
That's exactly right. That's his problem.
Yeah. Stephen?
Well, I think primarily the reason that the President's in trouble is because of his policies. I think it's because of the economy, because the stimulus hasn't worked the way that the White House said it would work, because they pushed health care at a time when people weren't ready for health care. But there's also something bigger, and this is that something bigger. The President came to office promising to change the tone in Washington. This was going to be a new Washington, a transformed Washington, and people were going to treat each other differently. And what we've seen from the White House, and I think it's in evidence in this comment when he's talking about Republicans as enemies, is that they're doing things the old way. And they're not only doing things the old way, they're doing things the old way in a particularly ham-handed and backwards fashion in many cases.
You know, you look at John Boehner, who is clearly very fired up. He wants this job. He wants to be the Majority Leader. And he's laying this out last night in such a way. And you go back to the health care and all the legislation that President Obama passed with the help of Nancy Pelosi, and it was largely written by the Congress, right? And in those instances, the President backed off. He let Congress write that legislation for him. Now he may be dealing with John Boehner. So who's he going to turn to you know, craft legislation and to fight his battles now if this happens?
This is the challenge, because what the President is going to need to do is to work with the Republicans, what few moderate Democrats are left, to fashion compromises. And the Republicans, I think Steve would acknowledge, have some problems there, both with the Tea Party members. Mitch McConnell has said the highest priority is not cooperation, but making Obama a one-term president. So you have these two warring factions who have to come together, neither of whom wants to, and we're getting into uncharted waters, and I think ultimately nobody really knows how it'll play out.
And that enemies comment in so many ways encapsulates, to me, Steve, this Tea Party issue, because he was talking to Latino voters about the legislation in Arizona, for one thing, right? And he's saying, you know, so these guys are your enemies. They want you, you know, they want to stop you as you're driving down the road. And then on the other side, you've got Boehner, who's saying, don't let them call you an enemy. You are patriots, okay? He's rallying. He's speaking to this Tea Party base with this.
He is. I mean, you know, it's interesting to hear the President talk like that, because he's using a caricature of the Tea Party movement from a year ago. I mean, it no longer applies. Remember, initially, the Tea Party was this sort of fake grassroots movement. Nancy Pelosi called it AstroTurf. There wasn't really anything to it. It wasn't that significant. And we now find in polls that, you know, nearly 50% of Americans think that the Tea Party, in one way or another, speaks for them. So the President's trying to marginalize and make a fringe of the Tea Party when they're not, in fact, a fringe. And I think it's really coming back to boomerang on him.
Yeah, thanks so much, you guys. I mean, this is really, it focuses on a lot of the big issues that we're going to do exit polling tonight. We're going to see how people feel about the Tea Party, see how they feel about these issues. So we'll look to that. We know we're going to see you all throughout the day and evening. Thank you so much,
Thank
gentlemen.
you.